It's your boy Cass with Taboo Topics. So, the Carmelo Anthony case, right? And no, not the basketball player. I was talking to a guy today and I asked him if he had heard about him and following it or whatnot. And he said to me, well, I just heard that it was Carmelo Anthony and I thought it was a ball player and I just kept scrolling. No, it's not about that. It's about a kid, two kids in Texas, two teenagers who got into a confrontation and one of them tragically lost their life. So, so Carmelo Anthony is a black kid. He's accused of stabbing a Caucasian kid named Austin, and Austin ended up losing his life. So if you have not been following the story, you've been under a rock somewhere. That's kind of the gist of it, you know. To give you a little bit more of a background on it, because I really want to ask you guys your opinion on what you really think, because I have an opinion on whether or not I think he's going to go down. And I mean, as of right now, it's not looking good. I mean, don't get me wrong. I I don't think Austin should have lost his life. That young man is someone's son. That young man had a lot of life ahead of him, regardless of what happened. But in this case, two lives are messed up. You know what I mean? One is lost, and now one is either facing life in prison, or even if he gets off, he still has to live his life now with this over his head, right? So they were at a track meet, and there were different schools at this meet. These, by the way, these are high schools, um, and these were high school students. And Carmelo was with an opposing school of Austin's. So, to my understanding, according to court records, it was raining that day. And it started raining pretty tough, and all the schools had tents, or canopies, I should say, not even necessarily tents. The only school that did not have a canopy was Carmelo School. So, as the story is told, as all the kids are huddling under these tents to keep from getting wet, and Carmelo decided that he would approach one of these opposing school tents to not get wet. So he felt that he saw somebody in one of these tents that he, was familiar with, and he went over there to dap him up, say what's up to him, and get acquainted and get out the rain. Well, some of the other kids under the tent didn't think that was cool and decided they were going to stand up and let Carmelo know that, hey, you can't be under here. This is where you're the opposing school, or are you even a part of the track meet? But then again, but they were saying also that Carmelo had on his school gear, with his logos and school name and things like that on it. So obviously they knew who he was, but that turned into an escalation. As now, I don't want to speak too direct on the situation, because they don't really know all the details right now, because they just went to court. It just started about 2 days ago. So only so much information has come out. So I'm lightly touching on some of this stuff. But again, so they're saying that four particular students under the tent approached Carmelo and said, hey, you can't be under here. You got to go. And as they were saying, Austin, who has a twin brother, they were both approaching Carmelo, and the more that they told him he had to leave, the more aggressive the situation got. And Carmelo became a little combative and said, hey, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be right here. And now I'm imagining, this is me saying this, that Carmelo probably said, it's raining out there. I'm not leaving out there right now. You guys not going to intimidate me. So I can imagine, because now I'm adding to the story, because there's not a lot much more than that in there, that now Austin is getting irritated. Now his twin brother, it's being said now that his twin brother actually was not involved. But that's speculation, right? The speculation is because during this court proceeding, which I listened to today, they were saying that no one really approached Carmelo. The only person that really spoke up was Austin. Like, there were some other kids that may have comfortably said, "Hey, this is not your tent. You can't be here." In a more polite way, I guess. But they're saying that Austin was more of the aggressor. I don't believe that. If I'm being totally honest now, I do believe Austin spoke up. I do believe some of the other kids spoke up. The trouble I'm having with it is because Carmelo says, as it's being alleged, Carmelo says that I'm not going anywhere. And if it's going to be more of an issue like that, just don't put your hands on me. So in that moment, I'm thinking to myself, Carmelo's probably thinking, man, you can say whatever you want to say. Just don't put your hands on me. And then it's said that Carmelo had a book bag with him, and he puts his hand in his book bag, and he's constantly making these threats like, just don't put your hands on me. So part of the story that I left out, again, talking about them going to court, witnesses anyway, a lot of the witnesses, or to my understanding, the majority of the witnesses, which were students of Austin in terms of classmates, were the ones to testify. And of course, most of them are testifying that Carmelo was the instigator. He was a troublemaker. And they're saying that multiple kids did not approach him. They're saying that Carmelo was egging Austin on. He was trying to intimidate him, or he was trying to, like I said, egg on the situation, as I was saying, and that it just only enraged Austin more and more. And the taunting got to a place where Austin decided to walk up to him and say, "Hey," shoved him and said, "Hey, you got to go." And in that moment, these kids who testified says that Carmelo stood up, took out his knife, stabbed Austin in the stomach, and then backed away and fled. That's the story, right? Well, the gist of the story. I mean, I don't know how to feel about that. And like I said, I hate touching on these stories without really knowing, exactly what the case is when the evidence hasn't really come out just yet and it's only witnesses. But I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, does Carmelo have any witnesses? Because he was in an unfamiliar place or unfamiliar territory. He didn't really belong where he was. I mean, they're saying that obviously those of us that, went to high school, most of us went to high school. I mean, you really didn't involve yourself with the opposing school if there was some type of sporting event going on. We really just didn't do that. And I don't see that changing too much in today's, world or whatnot, right? But anyway, he found himself over and this situation happened in the opposing team's tent. He's not, I mean, unless there's some cell phone footage out there we don't know about, you know what I'm saying? Or unless there's people that were with the opposing school, with Austin school, that are willing to stand up and say, I saw otherwise. I mean, it's beginning to look more and more like Carmelo really was the instigator. At the same time, I mean, he shouldn't have been there under their tent. I mean, I heard someone say the other day that the Carmelo school had buses, and that a lot of the kids, when it started raining, they just went to the buses because they didn't have a tent. Don't get me wrong. I mean, some people are just carefree. They're free spirits. When they love people regardless of the situation. And maybe Carmelo just felt like, I know somebody, I recognize somebody. It should be cool. It's raining. Who would trip? And he walked over there. You know what I'm saying? Thinking it would be smooth. But at the same time, a lot of people are saying, but he knew he had this knife in his book bag. And if there was going to be trouble, then the outcome will be the outcome. I mean, is that really instigating? I mean, even if he's thinking that, though, is that really instigating, though? I mean, I just don't really know what to think. I mean, but if I'm being honest, as of right now, the case is really early. It's only been like day 2 right now. It's not looking good. I mean, because at the end of the day, you can't threaten someone's life just because they don't want you around. I mean, there's court testimony that says from one of the coaches that got on the stand and said, well, he admits to stabbing this kid. And he made a statement that said, just don't put your hands on me. And then when it goes a little bit further than that, when one of the kids were saying, well, he was taunting, like, try me, I dare you, talking about Carmelo, while his hand was in his book bag. And the kids with Austin was like, you don't have anything. You're in a peaceful community. Crime doesn't happen here. You're full of it. I mean, that kind of sounds like Carmelo probably was egging the situation on a little bit more because, like I said, that's not a reason to kill somebody, man. My thing is, Carmelo, he could have gotten up and walked away, regardless of the situation, because he knew he didn't belong. So he got there under this tent and he was being aggressive because he didn't like what was being said to him. Carmelo didn't handle it the right way. Now, a lot of people gonna be mad at me for that. I'm gonna get a lot of hate, I'm sure. But hey, I'm my own person. I'm not a follower. I call it how I see it. And like I said, my channel was Taboo Topics. Obviously, I'm gonna be taboo for it, but I don't care what people say, man. I'm going to have my own opinion no matter what. And like I said, you can't go around, stabbing people because you don't like something that they say to you or because you feel unwelcomed. He had an opportunity to leave, and he didn't do that. He stood his ground. I mean, and I don't know the laws about in Texas in terms of standing your ground, but even if that was the case, he had an opportunity to leave. He wasn't Austin hadn't really put his hands on him in the beginning. He only did so after he felt at some point allegedly, um, you know, aggravated based on Carmelo's refusal to leave. You know, I just don't know. I don't know what to think of this, but like I said, it's not looking good for him though, because it's the most that we can say that we do know right now was that Carmelo had a chance to just get up and leave and to walk away. It was almost like he stood there taunting Austin, like, I'm gonna do whatever I want. Try me if you want to. I mean, that in itself, because that's on. I was just going to say earlier, that's on police body cam footage. They can hear and see him saying this. Well, at least admitting to this. You know what I mean? So it's going to be interesting to see. If you disagree with me, let me know. If you agree with me, tell me about it. Give me some viewpoints. Because at first I was like, well, it's self defense. Because technically, Austin touched him first. And I was kind of ignoring the idea that he warned him. I'm like, but at the end of the day, Austin still touched him. But at the same time, if you really read between the lines, and I'm talking about the testimony so far between the coaches, there's been a couple of coaches that testify, as well as some of the students with on Austin school or whatnot. I mean, you know, like I said, it's tough because it's just starting to look like Carmelo may have instigated it. He may have egged this thing on. So, I mean, like I said, I don't know. It's not looking good, and I think based on that little part right there, he's probably going to do some time. They're charging him with first degree murder. He's not being charged with manslaughter. Obviously, a judge can change that at some point, but we got to see. We got to see how it goes. So we got to see how this case plays out. They're saying it's probably going to be about 2 weeks worth of case and worth of testimony and arguments and different things like that on both parties. But at the same time, while we're waiting, there's a lot of protesting going on outside this courthouse. There's a lot of people out there upset, in terms of in favor of Carmelo and in favor of Austin. And like I said a few minutes ago, I think the whole thing is sad. I think it's crazy that that young man lost his life. Somebody's son, somebody's brother, someone's grandchild. And now at the same time, it's possible that Carmelo's life is going to be lost because he can end up doing life in prison. Now, real quick before I get off of here, just to add, I did also hear testimony from one of the coaches that said, it was explained to him that you stabbed this kid. And if that kid dies, your life is going to change forever. And that Carmelo broke down in tears, like it's very emotional because he, for a moment, didn't know that Austin had died. And he didn't know that it was as severe as it was, and he was still arguing the point that I told him not to put his hands on me, and he put his hands on me, which was bad energy because you're admitting to doing something and you're saying that you had a split second to walk away and you didn't do it. But anyway, like I said, let me know what you guys think. And we'll continue to fight this thing. It's your boy Kaz with Taboo Topics.